I'm Stephanie Gage, and welcome to the HerExchange Roundtable. So pleased to introduce my guest today, Deborah Corey, here with us, political blogger, and knows all about DC and the current events, culture, life. She's our expert today. And of course, our two fabulous ladies, Tara and Jay. We're going to get started today, ladies, with something good. Something that's been on the minds of many people today on the hot topics, and it's Michele Bachmann. She has been getting a lot of press lately regarding her State of the Union address rebuttal, and also some moments she's had in a speech she was giving in Iowa. I believe it was Iowan tax relief speech.
Where she tax reform.
Perfect, thank you. Where she was talking about our forefathers and slavery, and made some remarks she's been getting some heat about. So I want to talk about the publicity she's been getting and the attention, and is it good or bad for the Tea Party and the movement? Open that up.
Okay. I think that she is an excellent representative for the Tea Party. I'm going to say that honestly. And I said it mostly because, first and foremost, the people in the Tea Party love her. They think she's great. You know, you could not make them more happy than have a Michele Bachmann appearance. I know that because I've been to Tea Parties where she's made appearances, actually here in DC. I think as far as, you know, what happened with the SOTU response, basically, I mean, she made a few, you know, it was basically a good response. I mean, there was some questions about the way she was looking at the camera and whatnot. But, you know, she basically...
Some general staging issues.
General staging issues, you know, that happens. You know, nobody's perfect. But I think she did a really good job as far as giving a response focused on what the Tea Partiers want, which is to talk about fiscal issues, the state of the economy, and jobs, and that's what they want to hear about. And that was a sort of contrasting opinion to what Paul Ryan did with the official State of the Union response. And I should also say, like, off the bat, like, I am not a representative for Michele Bachmann or her office or anything like that. These are my opinions, but...
Absolutely. So if her response was on point, are we reacting more to Michele Bachmann, or is the limelight coming from a response to the Tea Party itself? Maybe that's a good question.
Let's just start with saying that, you know, any publicity is good publicity, especially when it comes to the Tea Party. So it doesn't matter if she made a couple of missteps, if there were issues with some of the facts that were issued in this address. It's more about whether or not it matters. If they're getting the attention, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, isn't that kind of the goal at this point? It's keeping them relevant, it's keeping them kind of in the spotlight and keeping attention where they want it, which is on them.
Pretty much. It's sad, actually, that any attention is good attention, even if it's bad in someone that might be misrepresenting history or the Tea Party or something like that. You know, and I understand that. That's what I say to a lot of my clients. You know, almost any attention is good attention. I wouldn't say all attention. I would say almost. But I do think, especially when you're, you know, a political candidate or someone who's, you know, an official in office, is that you should be sort of representing true facts. And I think that that's a bit of a problem, you know. And
that's been a big
I think
problem.
it's hurtful for the Tea Party, especially for people who disagree with them. It's even more ammunition to dislike them, you know.
But that's a possibility. I mean, I totally am understanding where you're coming from as far as some of the... I almost want to say that was like a sentence flipping or something she did at the speech in Iowa. And I think what happened is that there was some stuff going on off camera, some questions that were asked that she was then responding to, and, you know, she may have been a little more emotional trying to talk about an issue such as slavery and trying to explain how the Constitution could still be a good document, even though it was originally created by men who probably owned slaves. Like, that's a tough question to answer.
I mean, they did. Let's not say probably.
Okay,
they did. Let's just be on the clear.
That's a tough, that's a tough question to answer and to discuss something that happened so many hundred years ago. So I'm going to try to give her some leeway for being maybe a little overly emotional about a really sensitive subject.
That's a good women's conversation about a female being emotional versus a man being emotional in politics and how that's portrayed, which I think is you know, that point is very valid, and you know, that's probably a whole conversation in itself.
Yes. Well, she was clearly passionate.
But the emotion or this kind of hot button, you know, this particular instance, this aside, if we're saying that this was kind of driven by emotion, or maybe she was just a little passionate in her replies, I mean, what do you say to then her comments about the veterans and the benefit? I mean, because that's not
the benefits issues.
Right? Absolutely. So when you speak to something like that, I mean, there's no emotion behind it so much as it's just there were it was callous and perhaps to some
misguided.
people.
And going back to the original question about the Tea Party itself, I actually agree with you. I think there is some harm to that because I don't think she's a representation of everyone in the Tea Party as she's sort of become. I think there are probably well-read, well-educated people that have beliefs and opinions and feel a certain way.
But I think the Tea Party feels she is well-read and out.
Well, you did mention that she's well-loved in that, so that's another
I think she's well-liked as a figure for them. The one thing that I really love about the Tea Party is that it's made up of multiple people. There are multiple groups within it. It's not like organized in some main building somewhere, and there's different groups. It's very diverse in the different attitudes within it. You know, people, I mean, the big conversation right now in American politics is how do you define the Tea Party? And who is running it? And it's actually like several different groups. And
I think it's become
groups. It's
bigger than people the leadership is probably catching up with. I mean, it's got almost as much attention as, you know, the Republicans or the Democrats. I mean, if you think about that alone, it's pretty amazing that it just sort of, you know, filled a vacuum.
It really is like a third party, basically. It is that third party. We keep wondering where it was going to show up, how it was going to show up, what form it was going to take. It's the Tea Party.
It's here.
It's here. It just showed up.
Absolutely.
It's here.
I don't know that it looks exactly like what we needed, but, you know,
but it sure did show up.
It sure did show up. It sure did show up.
And it came on the scene. And like it or leave it, she is a voice out there right now. If I could identify one person a part of that movement, I identify her. So she's taken that momentum in those last few weeks.
There's a variety of leaders, but them, as far as them liking her as like a favorite face, definitely. They love her. I mean, you can't help that. I haven't exactly examined how they feel about her like post, you know, the event in Iowa, but I think that for a lot of them, their main focus is really on the Constitution and on the economy and on fixing some budgetary issues that we have.
Which would surprise me then there wouldn't be a greater issue if the focus is on the Constitution. To have a leader that was really aware of it would seem to be of paramount importance.
I think it was a flub. I think she got really nervous and had a flub. I think she flipped some words around, and don't we all know that there's a lot of politicians in town that have some major flubs.
Everybody gets slapped for it.
And we love them anyways, so it happens, but that's what I'm going to say anyways at this point about it.
What's interesting about the Tea Party is that they've got two women very visual in the party, and which is, you know, refreshing to see that women in there, despite how you line up with them or not, which relates back to what we talked about last night, last roundtable, women being in that public zone. So what do we think about that in terms of having Sarah Palin and Michele Bachmann very much, you know, in the limelight as examples for women?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely are visible and at the forefront. It's a positive in that regard alone for me, personally.
Although I feel like there's so few women that are in that limelight, and you know, from a personal standpoint, I'd prefer to see people that, you know, obviously I agree with more, and I think are positive influencers in a way where, you know, yes, they're saying more things that I like, but maybe some things that I'm less offended by, that I wish would be better role models for women. I wish there were other women who were excelling, you know, to put them on a pedestal. And sometimes, you know, on a personal level, I worry about that it's, you know, that it's these two. But to each their own.
It's these two, but they're women.
They're women. Take them.
Right.